Gervonta, I don't know. What if Jake hits him? You know, Jake's a big guy. I don't know if Gervonta stood next to Jake. Jake's a big guy.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
And Gervonta is small even by lightweight standards.
Right.
So it is a little bit of a David and Goliath fight. It's just, you know, the David character in Gervonta is much more skilled.
But that guy, because he's better than you, what if he wins? Everything Jake Paul has done is wiped completely out. Gervonta Davis loses to Jake Paul. Obviously, it's going to hurt who Gervonta Davis is. But he lost to a guy that's going to be upwards of 70 pounds bigger than him. But I will tell you this right now, without a shadow of a doubt. I will watch this. Tank Davis is 30-0-1. You want to talk about Jake Paul fighting a real boxer? That's a real boxer. You can't make this stuff up, man. It's true.
You know, trying to push toward his goal of you know, ingraining himself in the sport of boxing, and kind of does both of them. So it's kind of a weird place to be, because he wants the respect of the boxing fans and the boxing hierarchy and hardcore boxing people.
When the news first dropped that Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis were being lined up for a fight, the boxing world stopped in its tracks. The sheer weight difference, the clashing styles, the business logic, and the controversy surrounding it makes this one of the most bizarre and fascinating matchups in recent memory. Analysts, podcasters, fighters, and fans have all thrown in their opinions, many scratching their heads but still tuning in. In this breakdown, we'll dive into the conversation quote by quote, unpacking the layers of hype, criticism, and intrigue behind a fight that feels almost too strange to be real.
You saw Jake Paul and Tank Davis?
I don't understand how that's happening, though.
I mean, that's kind of what Jake Paul does, right?
That nigga's 7'8", 6'7". I'm not saying 7'8". Like, the nigga's
so what?
6'4".
Halfor Gerd kicked things off by pointing out just how strange this matchup looks on paper. He compared it to Mayweather versus Logan Paul, where the bigger YouTuber turned boxer got the opportunity of a lifetime against a legend.
So you think Jake wins?
Yes.
This is kind of like the Mayweather versus Logan Paul fight. And Mayweather, he got the better of Logan for sure. I think Logan's even bigger.
Then Jake? Fuck no.
Logan's bigger than Jake, yeah. Like bigger.
But here, the roles are twisted. Jake Paul isn't as tall or long as Logan, but he's still much bigger than Tank Davis, a man who has spent his career crushing opponents at 135 pounds. The question becomes, does size really matter this much in boxing when skill levels are drastically different? What Kyle highlighted, without outright saying it, is that Jake Paul is continuing his trend of making impossible fights possible. He operates outside boxing tradition, where weight classes are sacred and carefully guarded. Instead, he uses spectacle and controversy to bend the rules. This creates a fight where most think Tank has the skill, but Jake has the frame. It's the bizarre intersection of circus and sport that keeps fans locked in, even if they don't fully buy the matchup's legitimate.
But Jake's now a more experienced boxer than probably Logan was at that time.
I don't know. That weight shit, man, that shit is a real thing.
What's the odds on that shit? I wonder.
Kyle then leaned into the betting odds, and this is where things really get wild. Seeing Tank Davis, one of the most devastating finishers pound for pound, only sitting at a modest favorite against Jake Paul shows how strange the matchup is. Normally, a fighter with Tank's credentials would be a massive favorite, but the weight disparity makes odds makers cautious.
Oh, listen to this. Davis is minus 205 to beat Jake Paul. Jake Paul's plus 155.
Wow, that's tight odds. Tank Davis is minus 205. Jake Paul's 155 opening odds.
Jake.
Dude, that's crazy. I don't know.
Jake Paul isn't the same raw novice Logan was. He's got real ring time now, and he's faced former MMA champions and even pro boxers. Kyle emphasized how weight is a real thing, and that's critical here. Skill doesn't always erase size. If Jake can absorb Tank's shots and land his own, suddenly the fight becomes dangerous for Davis. The odds reflect that danger, showing that this is not a straightforward mismatch in the eyes of bookmakers. It's a calculated gamble, both in the betting markets and in Jake Paul's broader career strategy.
To happen months ago, and I was saying it was a nonsensical fight for Jake to do. I still think it's a nonsensical one from a boxer perspective, from his goals in boxing perspective. But again, if it makes dollars, it makes sense, and we've seen that Jake will kind of bounce in between doing these entertainment fights.
Wade Plemons called this matchup nonsensical from a pure boxing standpoint, and he's right. Jake has built his boxing journey on two tracks: entertainment spectacle and gradual legitimacy. He's fought aging MMA stars for clout, but also tested himself against pro boxers like Tommy Fury. The Tank Davis fight lands somewhere in between.
You know, trying to push toward his goal of you know, ingraining himself in the sport of boxing, and kind of does both of them. So it's kind of a weird place to be, because he wants the respect of the boxing fans and the boxing hierarchy and hardcore boxing people.
On one hand, it makes no sense. Tank is smaller and the skill gap is massive. On the other hand, it makes perfect sense because of how much money and attention it generates. Wade's point hits on Jake's constant seesaw between credibility and entertainment. Hardcore boxing fans roll their eyes, but casual fans open their wallets. That's the paradox Jake thrives in. He doesn't need to please purists. He just needs to keep people talking. This fight ensures exactly that, whether or not it adds anything meaningful to his resume as a real boxer.
But at the same time, he'll gain some of that and then lose some of it. It's like a seesaw of his fights. Like one fight, and be like, okay, that's a real fight, or that's a real fight, and he'll go and he'll win the fight.
Wade doubled down on the strange cycle of Jake Paul's career. He gains respect with one fight, then loses it with another. Against Anderson Silva, he earns some credibility. Against Tommy Fury, he lost it. Then against Nate Diaz, he was mocked again.
Jake fights are just weird because I don't even know how to describe them.
The Tank Davis fight is another wild swing of that pendulum. If Jake somehow wins, critics will downplay Tank's size. If he loses, detractors will say he was exposed again. It's a never-ending push and pull. Wade called Jake's fights weird, and that's the perfect word. They don't follow traditional boxing logic. They're events first, contest second, and yet fans tune in precisely because they're unpredictable. That unpredictability is Jake's greatest weapon, not his right hand, but his ability to blur the line between serious sport and entertainment spectacle.
Who said this recently, that they wish they had it like Jake Paul, where you could just go through all the weight classes and be like, I'm gonna fight. Everybody's up for a fight. Everybody's in the room for the fight with Jake, from flyweight to heavyweight. It's great. You got all the kinds of options.
Paulie Malignaggi brought a different perspective, saying Jake Paul is unique because he can jump across weight classes without resistance. Traditional fighters climb divisions carefully, taking years to move up, but Jake can leap from flyweight-sized opponents to heavyweights because the spectacle sells. That's unheard of in boxing history.
It's really win-win, I guess. I mean, I can't say it's win-win for Gervonta as much as it is for Jake. Jake, it's like, okay, you're fighting a former world lightweight champion. You're bigger, so you have some advantages, even if you're, at a severe skill disadvantage.
For Jake, it's win-win. If he loses, people shrug because he's not supposed to beat elite fighters. If he wins, it's a sensation. Against Tank, that logic holds again. Tank has everything to lose. Jake has nothing. That imbalance is why people find the fight fascinating. Paulie pointed out the advantage Jake has in size, even if he's outmatched in skill. That creates a strange dynamic where Tank is expected to dominate. But if he doesn't, his reputation could crumble overnight.
You're not supposed to expect to do anything, but if you do, it's even, it's bananas for you, it's great.
Paulie then painted the fight as a David versus Goliath story, but with a twist. Normally, the smaller man is the underdog. Here, Tank Davis is smaller, but also far more skilled. Jake Paul is bigger, but still learning the sport. This creates a strange inversion. The technically superior fighter is the David, while the unpolished giant is Goliath.
Gervonta, I don't know, what if Jake hits him? Jake's a big guy. I don't know if Gervonta stood next to Jake. Jake's a big guy.
Yeah, he's a big dude, yeah.
And Gervonta is small even by lightweight standards.
Right.
So it is a little bit of a David and Goliath fight. It's just, the David character in Gervonta is much more skilled.
That dynamic makes the fight intriguing because boxing isn't always about who's better. It's about who can impose their advantages. If Jake can use his size effectively, smothering Tank, leaning on him, and absorbing his shots, the fight gets interesting. But if Tank's speed and precision carry the day, then Jake becomes another big man cut down to size. Paulie's analysis captures why the fight feels both absurd and compelling. It's a clash of extremes.
What has he done for the sport? I mean, manufactured or not, he went out there and he performed and he got knockouts and people tuned in. Boxing fans tuned in. And you can talk about that shoe fight and that shoe. They're not boxing fans. Gervonta Davis sold pay-per-views to boxing fans.
Chris Algieri stepped in to remind everyone that Jake Paul, love him or hate him, has produced results. Manufactured or not, he scored knockouts, sold pay-per-views, and gotten people talking. That's what boxing desperately needs right now. Attention. Tank Davis is already a proven pay-per-view star, but pairing him with Jake amplifies that reach.
And he got boxing fans to come to fights, which is so needed. Desperately needed in this day and age.
They marketed him that way.
Nobody
you can market
sells.
anybody.
Chris argued that boxing's marketing machine can build anyone, and Jake Paul is the best modern example. He's been marketed brilliantly, and that machine meeting Tank's legitimate star power creates a financial juggernaut. Whether or not the fight is fair, it sells, and at the end of the day, that's the business of boxing. Purists might scoff, but promoters see dollar signs, and that's why the fight exists in the first place.
He's one of the least active punchers in the game with the highest knockout percentage. percentage of current heavyweight.
But if he was a real knockout artist,
current champions.
if he was a real knockout artist, prop him up against the best of the best.
Chris and Paulie together made the case that if you've got two built-up fighters, why not match them against each other? Tank Davis has been built as a knockout star, while Jake Paul has been built as the YouTube disruptor. Both come with inflated narratives, and when you crash those narratives together, you get fireworks.
They should fight each other, right? I mean, by what you're saying, I'm not saying that you like the build-up, but if you got two guys that are built up, and you're saying Gervonta Davis is built up, obviously Jake Paul's built up.
I'm
Why
saying
not fight each other?
no.
This is classic boxing promotion. Two stories colliding to see which one survives. And fans love it. People know Jake isn't on Tank's level skill-wise, but the intrigue lies in whether his size and power can bend the story. Tank has the chance to prove his skills transcend size, while Jake has the chance to upset the world again. In a sport built on hype, this is the kind of matchup that keeps the wheels turning.
Jake Paul is fighting Gervonta Tank Davis. There's one problem. He fights at 135 pounds. Gervonta Davis is that much better than Jake Paul at boxing.
Daniel Cormier cut through the noise with a simple point. Tank Davis is just better than Jake Paul. Skills matter in boxing, and Tank's skills are elite. The problem is weight. DC respected Jake for what he's building, but he was clear that Davis is operating at a disadvantage here. The weight gap is enormous.
But Gervonta Davis in his last fight weighed 133.8 pounds. And I'm not over here in the business of just crapping on Jake Paul. I am much more respectful of what he's starting to build as a professional boxer. You're fighting a guy that's better than you. He's just much smaller.
Tank weighed in at 133.8 pounds in his last fight, while Jake fights near cruiserweight. That's a nearly 70-pound difference on fight night. In most combat sports, the fight doesn't even get sanctioned. But in the circus world of boxing spectacle, it might. DC's point underscores the absurd. Jake isn't cherry-picking Tank because he's bigger. He's cherry-picking him because Tank is smaller but famous, making the spectacle even stranger.
But that guy, because he's better than you, what if he wins? Everything Jake Paul has done is wiped completely out. Gervonta Davis loses to Jake Paul. Obviously, it's going to hurt who Gervonta Davis is. But he lost to a guy that's going to be upwards of 70 pounds bigger than him.
DC then raised the ultimate stakes. What happens if Jake Paul actually beats Tank Davis? Suddenly, everything Tank has built would collapse. He'd be remembered as the elite champion who lost to a YouTuber, even if that YouTuber was 70 pounds bigger. Jake, meanwhile, would gain more than ever before, skyrocketing into legitimacy overnight. That's why this fight is dangerous for Tank, but low risk for Jake.
But I will tell you this right now, without a shadow of a doubt. I will watch this. Tank Davis is 30-0-1. You want to talk about Jake Paul fighting a real boxer? That's a real boxer. You can't make this stuff up, man. It's true.
Cormier admitted he would watch no matter what, and that's the bottom line. The fight makes no sense, but people can't look away. It's too bizarre, too risky, too unprecedented. That's exactly why it's happening. Boxing has always thrived on spectacle, and this one delivers it in space. So where does all of this leave us? A matchup like Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis defies boxing logic. But boxing has never been a sport that only survives on logic. It thrives on drama, spectacle, and the stories that fans can't stop debating. On one side, you have Tank Davis, a pound-for-pound star, a knockout machine, and one of the most skilled fighters of his generation, but undersized by nearly 70 pounds. On the other side, you have Jake Paul, a disruptive force who bends the sport to his will, creating opportunities that should not exist but somehow do. The question isn't just about size versus skill or entertainment versus legitimacy. It's about whether boxing itself has entered a new era where anything can be made, sold, and justified if it grabs enough attention. And when fights like this carry so much financial weight, people naturally begin to wonder, is it all real? Could a matchup this bizarre, with so much money on the line, be influenced, tilted, or even rigged to ensure the story continues? Whether that suspicion is fair or not, it's the shadow that follows every Jake Paul fight. Win or lose, controversy lingers, and that's why fans keep tuning in. Rigged or real, circus or competition, one thing is undeniable. Jake Paul versus Tank Davis has already done its job. It has us talking, arguing, and waiting for the bell to ring.